That means there are various learners with different ages, learning styles, talents, abilities, and background. This teaching strategy is highly recommended for primary grades because of its step-by-step procedures, and the teacher has a great support for the learner's achievement. These are the objectives for our session. At the end of the session, you will be able to define and describe explicit instruction, discuss the components of explicit instruction, cite ways on how explicit instructions can be applied in teaching mathematics. Who needs to learn mathematics? Let us identify the people who need to learn math. First is the doctor. Why? We all know the job of the doctor. He is giving correct prescription and right amount of medicines to administer to his patient. Otherwise, patient will not get well and worse, will die. Second, the driver can be taxi driver or bus driver. Here in the Philippines, we have jeepney drivers. The passengers directly give their fare to the driver. What if the driver doesn't know how to give exact exchange? Probably he will not only get deficit, nor the passengers will complain about inadequate change from his fare. Third, the farmer. He knows how many seedlings to plant in an hectare of field, how much fertilizer he will use, his expenses, and how much he will earn from his farming. All is computed. Next is the government official. He should know the number of people in the community, number of voters that he will get in the election, number of male and female, young and old, and the persons with disabilities. So he can manage his community very well. The other one is the carpenter. Of course, he should know how to use the measuring tools, otherwise he will get mistaken cutting the wood. He cannot do his work perfectly. Another is the policeman. He should know the number of crimes occurred in a day, in a week, and in a month, the number of solved and unsolved cases, including pending cases. He knows the ballistics of the rifle, for instance, the strength of wind against bullet and the distance to be able to hit the target. And finally, the vendor. Same as the driver, she must give exact amount of exchange to his customers for the goods they bought. Otherwise, she will get bankrupt and her store will get closed as well. Therefore, everybody needs to learn mathematics. So the challenge, therefore, of teaching mathematics is on our hands. There is a saying, be proud you are a teacher. The future depends on you. How do you then teach your children in mathematics? This is our mathematics curriculum framework. It is seamless and a spiral progression. We have the content standards, competencies for every quarter, the strategies to be administered to be able to achieve the set goals to every lesson. Although countries may vary their curriculum framework, but I believe they have a common denominator when it comes in goals. This is to make every learner become a critical thinker and a problem solver. As you can see, the center of our curriculum framework are the two main goals. These are critical thinking and problem solving. These are skills that every learner must possess. This is the so-called 21st century skills. Again, the goals are critical thinking and problem solving. What is critical thinking? It is the intellectual discipline process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, evaluating information from observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, and communication as a guide to belief and action. What is a critical thinker? The critical thinkers ask questions, gather relevant information, efficiently process information, reason logically on information, come to reliable conclusion. How to develop critical thinkers? Don't be a hinder to children's learning. Give them lots of references. Provide as many examples as you can, and let them manipulate mathematical tools, and must have always the big ears to listen to them. Pay attention to the needs of every child because each of them is unique and they have diversity in nature. Problem solver. What is a problem solver? The problem solvers can define the problem clearly, can identify what are the possible causes of the problem, determine how and why did it happen, can give what are the possible solutions, and make a decision. Provide them with basic foundation that they may create connections on their minds. Because it is important to have a good foundation at the first stage of the child's education or learning. She must get the necessary requirements to nurture his or her mind towards critical thinker. How do you teach mathematics? Can you give some strategies or methods or approach that you can use in teaching mathematics? So let's have first is Singaporean math. Are you familiar with this? Singaporean math, the program uses a three-step learning model, moving from concrete, such as showing something using manipulatives, to the pictorial, creating a visual representation on paper, to the abstract solving problems. This is from concrete to abstract. The next strategy or method is common method. The students learn by doing the worksheets independently without being taught. For example, when they are studying comfortably, students can do the work by themselves. They can get a 100% score. They enjoy their study and they can advance to the next worksheet without difficulty. The next one is deductive or lecture. As we all know, the lecture, the teacher just write the methods and how it solved the problems, and the learners just copy the mathematics solution. Then the next one is deductive. This is from difficult to easy or from general to specific. Cooperative learning is a teaching strategy in which small teams, each with students of different levels or of ability, use a variety of learning activities to improve their understanding of a subject. The next one is Socratic method. It involves a shared dialogue between teacher and students. The teacher leads by posing thought-provoking questions. The students actively engage by asking questions of their own. The discussion goes back and forth. This is the so-called question and answer portion. The next one is model method. Teacher will do the learners teacher will do and the learners will imitate. And the next one is inductive. This is the opposite of deductive method. It is the other way around from specific to general. Inquiry-based teaching approach that emphasizes students' questions, ideas, and observation. This form of learning enhances comprehension rather than memorizing facts and taking notes. Students are now encouraged to discuss ideas among with peers. Discovery, or this is the discovery approach. This encourages the students to learn the facts, develop the skills, and acquire the knowledge by actively working with the information gathered. Constructivism, are you familiar with this? Is based on the idea that learners actively construct or make their own knowledge and that reality is determined by their experiences as learners. Next is reflective thinking. This is a part of the critical thinking process referring specifically to the process of analyzing and making judgment about what has happened. The other one, the next is experiential learning. Probably you are using this in your classroom. It's the process of learning through experience and is more narrowly defined as learning by doing. And finally, the teaching strategy that we will talk about this evening, this day, is the explicit instruction. Are you familiar with this explicit instruction? What is explicit instruction? Explicit instruction is another way of saying, can you identify the words? Okay, if you answer effective, meaningful, direct teaching, you are correct. So explicit instruction is another way of saying effective, meaningful, and direct teaching. It is a skill-based, but students are active participants in the learning process. Explicit instruction is not just skill and drill. What are the skills? The skills in adding, estimating, solving, representing, and communicating. Teaching math for meaning. Now, this is a picture of Superman. When he teared down his clothes, Superman teared down his clothes because there is someone in danger. His superpower reveals when needed. However, you cannot identify Superman when there is no danger. He's plainly human. He's hiding his superpowers. In explicit teaching, you don't make the students guess what the lesson is and why and how they should learn it. It is not like discovery and constructivism, because discovery approach encourages the students to learn the facts, develop the skills, and acquire the knowledge by actively working the information gathered. While constructivism is based on the idea that learners actively construct or make their own knowledge and that reality is determined by their experience as learners. What if the learners lack of schema or what we call the prior knowledge? They will struggle in learning the lesson. You let them on the big secret. At the start of the lesson, teacher must tell the purpose of learning the lesson and why it is important to learn the lesson. It is not inductive but deductive process. Why? Because the teacher have already been given the general view of the lesson at the beginning. What is explicit instruction? It's holistic. It's not just used to teach isolated facts and procedures. Integrate smaller learning units into meaningful wholes. Does not teach basic skills in isolation, from meaningful context. Some educators have wrong notion on what education is about. We, the educators, are sometimes treating our pupils as baskets filling information, knowledge, formulas, but it's not the meaning of education. Education is derived from the Latin word educare, which means to lead or bring out. So bring out what is good in the child. Learner is compared to a seed. If we will describe a seed is a small embryonic plant enclosed in covering called the seed coat, usually with some stored food. The tree is in that seed. The seeds are the generations, are the new generations. The gardener, not to tell the seed how to be apple tree, but to provide proper conditions and proper care. It is a metaphor, right? Meaning, the gardener is the teacher. He must provide the needs of its learner, help the child to bring out the best of the child by facilitating the lesson well, make the environment conducive to learning, give them good atmosphere, let them enjoy every lesson, and manifest in them the eagerness that they are excited in learning a new lesson. What is explicit instruction? Is a sequence of supports. Explicit instruction has a series and sequence of support. Can you guess the components of explicit instruction? There are 6 components. Here are the 6 components of explicit instruction. First is setting the stage for learning. Next, explaining to students what to do. The third one is modeling for students. The fourth one is independent practice. Number 5, guided practice. And last is closure or assessment. Again, these are the 6 components of explicit instruction. Setting the stage for learning, explaining to students what to do, modeling for students, guided practice, independent practice, and closure or assessment. Let's have the first component, setting the stage for learning. This is the first step in applying explicit instruction. Do the children have background knowledge on the lesson? At this portion, you have to state the objective and the desired outcome, such as today we are going to learn fractions, for instance, and explain why do they need to learn it. Do they even care about the lesson? Does it help in their life? Could they use this in their everyday life? This is why the skill is important to develop, so they can do and apply their learnings in their daily life. This is what we call the lifelong learning. And do they know why they have to learn a particular skill? Make connection on the objective and purpose by integrating their first-hand information into the lesson. In lesson planning, this is the prerequisite concept and skills. The objectives were drawn from the curriculum competencies and share assessment tool. How will I know you've learned it? So by using the assessment tool. And the next component is explain the student what to do. Choose language that is clear, precise, and pupil-friendly language. Make direct connections to previously learned material. Pre-teach any pertinent math skill. You can use MTB or mother tongue base. In the Philippines, we use Kapampangan, Ilocano, Tagalog, and more. Those are just few languages that I have mentioned. In fact, we have a lot of languages we use in the Philippines. I don't know yours, but it is highly suggested use the language wherein the learners understand the lesson better. You can do the drill activity and review and motivation. The next component is the third component, modeling this is the I do phase. This is the teacher phase or the teacher's activity. The teacher will model the procedures in computing a math problem. Show pupils how to achieve the objective. Demonstrate, use metacognitive strategies such as think aloud, orally model the thought process on a child mathematician. Limit language, speak clearly, make eye contact with students, check engagement. You can apply Singaporean math in this portion. How? Use concrete objects that are available in their area. In this time of pandemic, use concrete objects that are available in their home. You show the ways how you compute or solve the mathematical sentences or math problem. In this case, you are presenting the lesson. Another, for modeling, teacher role modeling. Show how pupils will demonstrate proficiency. Provide and analyze examples of exemplary or non-exemplary pieces. Provide examples till they can figure out and master the method and technique. Show exemplar or previous pupils' work, the pupils' work that is considered as a pattern to be copied, and they can imitate the process. The fourth component is guided practice. This is what we call the we do phase. Practice has to parallel what you modeled. Monitoring, walk around or listen for participation of pupils. Use various methods to assess mastery. Example, solving problems with different solutions. This time, it is the teacher and learner space. Unlike in modeling, the pupils are just observers. This time, teacher and pupils work together. Teachers allow the pupils to solve the math problems with his support. They will put into practice of what they have observed. The teacher is monitoring the learners doing the given math activity. He can walk around and listen for participation of pupils. Another for guided practice we do. A teacher can check working out or working or not working strategy. So guided practice has also a discussion. Additional discussion instruction may be needed when teacher observes poor student comprehension. Extra practice. Once the teacher has provided additional instruction, she or should also provide time for additional guided practice. If there are some pupils who can follow the process, give additional. Ask the pupils to do what you do. In this instance, the time this is the time of performing the activity, processing the activity, and summarizing the lesson. Another component, still in guided practice, teacher will do the corrective feedback. It is important to check if the learners have followed the steps. In this instance, the correct answer is because. Show the correct answer. And how did you get it? Provide correct answer. My turn. This is the turn of the teacher. Model the correct response skill again. And pupils practice again. This is your turn or pupils' turn. Pupils provide answer, practice skill again, following the teacher's correction. And the fifth component is what we call the independent practice, the you-do phase. This is applying to a new activity and other math problem situations and provide pupils with time to practice independently. The practice should parallel the skill model, circulate to monitor individually, assist pupils, peer or group activity. And finally, for last but not the least, the number 6 or component 6 is closure or assessment. The students in a multi-grade classroom do not learn in the same way. The students who have different learning styles typically have different methods of demonstrating what they have learned. The use of variety of assessment approaches is needed to allow students to demonstrate what they have learned. To gain the most valuable evidence from assessments, the teacher needs to know how to choose the most suitable assessment strategy for each situation and how to make the assessment tool as effective as possible. A poorly chosen or poorly developed assessment will fail to provide useful evidence about the learner's learning. It could even provide misleading information. Only with good, properly chosen, developed assessments will teacher gather evidence of what their pupils have learned. In our lesson plan, this is the what we call evaluation portion. This time, the teacher must check if the objective or objectives of the lesson were attained. Provide them assessment materials. The teacher can use variety of assessment, can be traditional assessments, which is the paper and pencil test, or non-traditional assessments, which is for students' performance. The main role of the teacher is to make sure that their students learn. The main purpose of an assessment is to make sure that learning is happening. Teachers need to know what their students know and can do concerning the K-12 basic education curriculum. There is a wide range of assessment strategies and tools that teachers can use, which are all suitable in both multi-grade and mono-grade classes. This is assessment, and you can use rubrics if you are testing or assessing the performance of your learner. You can use rubrics. Another, this scaffolding learning theory pattern is another way of showing explicit instruction. The red box represents the teacher's responsibility, as you can see on the screen. On the other hand, yellow box represents the pupil's responsibility. The first three red boxes, this is the teacher's turn. The teacher is explaining the lesson. The second group of boxes, the teacher do the modeling with a little activity of learners. While the third is a guided practice. The learners are working or doing their activity with the support and guidance of the teacher. Finally, the fourth one is purely pupils' activity. These are the independent practice and application. You have to give them new activity or another mathematical problem in this portion. Okay, again, scaffolding learning. The first, teacher explanation. Second, teacher modeling. 5, guided practice. Number 3, guided practice, and 4, independent practice, and 5th is application. Again, let us recall and memorize the 6 components of explicit instruction. Setting the stage for learning, explaining to students what to do, modeling for students, guided practice, independent practice, and closure or assessment. With that, this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for joining me today.